Welcome everyone. In the previous lecture, we discussed about few macro elements, right? So we know that there are 9 macronutrients. What are the 9 macronutrients? What are the 9 macro elements? So we know they are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, MPN we will write, right? Nitrogen and CSK, right? So in that we covered carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen in the previous lecture. What are the roles of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen we covered in the previous lecture. Now in this lecture we'll try to cover the remaining elements. We'll try to cover about magnesium, phosphorus, calcium, sulphur and potassium we'll try to cover, right children? Now macronutrient means, macro element means the concentration is more than 10 millimoles per kg dry matter, right? So let's continue with the fifth element in this class. What is that fifth element? We'll write it here. We'll start with phosphorus, right? So we are going with the NCERT order. In NCERT, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, so they are structural elements, they mention it separately. The fourth element what they have mentioned is nitrogen, because nitrogen is absorbed by the plant in more concentration. Plant need nitrogen. After nitrogen, what is the next immediate element which is absorbed by the plant in more concentrations means it is phosphorus. So that is why NCERT has followed that order. We will also continue in that order only. So the fifth element is phosphorus, and we know that plant absorbs phosphorus in the form of inorganic ion, right? Plant absorbs phosphorus. It absorbs as inorganic ion. It absorbs as inorganic ion. In two forms it will absorb. What is that? H2PO4 minus and HPO4 2 minus. In two anionic forms it will absorb H2PO4 minus in this state or HPO4 2 minus. Either in this state or in this state, plant absorbs phosphorus from the soil, right? Then what are the roles of phosphorus to the plant? Now come on, think and tell me. Phospholipid we know, ATP, GTP, CTP, TTP, nucleotides we know, nucleic acids we know, NADP which is a coenzyme, their P is there, that we know. So all these are the functions of the phosphorus. Now phosphorus is an important constituent of, it is an important constituent of, where can we find phosphorus? I told cell membrane proteins, right? Cell membrane lipids, phospholipids are made up of phosphorus, right? If you take phospholipid, cell membrane has, or cell membrane is made up of phospholipids, and in the phospholipid phosphate is there. So it is one. Next one I am telling nucleotides, it is a constituent of, this is one function, other function is it is constituent of nucleotides. And we know from biomolecules chapter what are nucleotides. Like ATP is one nucleotide, CTP is another nucleotide, TTP, GTP, all these are the building blocks which makes nucleic acids. Means phosphorus is found in nucleotides, hence it makes nucleic acid. So phosphorus makes nucleic acids, then since it's making nucleotides, it will also make nucleic acids. So where are we finding phosphorus in the plant? We find in making nucleotides, we find in making nucleic acids, we find in making phospholipid. Phosphorus is an important constituent of nucleoprotein also. It is a constituent of, NCERT they have given, it is a constituent of nucleoprotein. Nucleoprotein means when nucleic acid combines with proteins, then that is called nucleoprotein. In nucleoprotein, phosphate is there. In nucleic acid, phosphate is there. With lipid, when phosphates will join in phospholipid, in cell membrane, phosphate is there. And what is the currency of the cell? What is that energy rich molecule, the currency of the cell? So phosphate is constituent of energy rich molecules. What are the energy rich molecule? Energy rich molecule, the currency of the cell. Are you getting it? The currency of the cell is ATP. The currency of the cell is ATP, adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphates, right? ATP is a currency, ADP is also a high energy compound. So all these are the places where we find phosphorus. So we understood that phosphate is very important. Without currency, cell cannot do anything. So in making currency, phosphate is involved. In making nucleoprotein, phosphate is involved. In making nucleic acids, it is involved. In making cell membrane phospholipids, it is involved. So it is very important. That is why plant absorbs phosphorus in more concentrations. Now let's go with the sixth element then. Can I switch on to the sixth element? Now the sixth element, we'll take it as potassium. Now why I am taking potassium? I told that I am going with the NCERT order. And why did NCERT give in this order? Means because they are checking with which element plant absorbs in more concentration. One by one they are mentioning. Nitrogen plant requires in most concentration. After nitrogen, phosphorus. After phosphorus, potassium it is. And plant absorbs potassium as K plus cation. So plant absorbs potassium as K plus cationic form. Right, Amma? It absorbs as cationic form, and this also is required by the plant in abundant quantities, NPK. All these three elements are required by the plant in more concentrations. Potassium is required in more concentrations by the plant. More concentrations by the plant. Where can we find potassium in the plant? Where can we find K plus in the plant? K plus is found in meristematic tissues also for division. K plus found in buds also for accumulation. Leaves also for photosynthesis. Root tips also for absorption. So K plus is found in all vital regions then. It is found in dividing tissue. It is found in buds. It is found in leaves. It is found in tips. So K plus is found in. Where do we find K plus? K plus is found in meristematic tissue. What did I tell about meristematic tissue? Actively dividing tissue. Here it is found. It is also found in the buds. Then I told leaves. And then we are telling in the root tips also K plus is found. In the root tips also K plus is found. And what are the physiological roles of K plus? Means what are the functions of K plus? Let us discuss. Now we know that K plus is main ion which helps in cation-anion balance. Inside the cell and outside the cell, cation concentration should be balanced, anion concentration should be balanced. If it is not balanced, so one ion should go from this side to that side to maintain that equilibrium. Not all the elements can maintain cation-anion balance. Like chlorine will maintain, like potassium will maintain, sodium will maintain, like that we have to, calcium will maintain. So 4 elements I told. Now we are talking about potassium. We can tell one important physiological function of potassium is to maintain cation-anion balance, correct? So what are the functions, physiological roles if you have to write down? First role we are telling, it helps in maintenance of cation-anion balance. In the cell, with the cell and with the surrounding environment, cation-anion balance should be maintained. If there is any disturbance, some ion should go outside, some ion should come inside to maintain that balance. So potassium helps to maintain the cation-anion balance. In the previous chapter, transport in plants, we studied that influx of K plus ions into the guard cells help in opening of the stomata. Means K plus can control the opening and closing of the stomata. It can control the opening and closing of the stomata. When the stomata opens, transpiration will happen, exchange will happen, water goes out, carbon dioxide comes in. So opening and closing of stomata is under the control of K plus. That is the second function. So first function maintains the cation-anion balance. Second function of K plus, I told it helps in opening and closing of the stomata. It helps in opening and closing of stomata. Now, if we draw the stomata here and this is a guard cells, I am telling when K plus ion comes in, when K plus ion comes into the guard cells, that's called influx. If anything comes in, it is called influx. Influx helps in opening the stomata. Influx help in opening the pore, stomata. Now, if at all the K plus goes out, if K plus goes out of the guard cell, that's called efflux. What is this called? This is called efflux. Now, efflux help in closing the stomata. It helps in closing the stomata. So, if K plus comes in, stomata will open. If K plus goes out, stomata will close. That's the second function. K plus also helps in protein synthesis. Proteins will make our body, not only our body, plant body also. For making protein synthesis, K plus is an activator. So, we can tell K plus is required for protein synthesis. K plus is required for protein synthesis, and protein is an important molecule that we can tell. And K plus, it is an activator. We know that enzymes are proteins and so many enzymes are activated by many metal elements. Like K plus is also a metal. K plus acts as an activator for how many enzymes, you know? More than 40. K plus acts as an activator for more than 40 enzymes. Let us write down. So, K plus acts as an activator. It acts as an activator for how many? More than 40 enzymes. For more than 40 enzymes, children. So, K plus acts as an activator. And when the K plus particles are coming into the guard cells, means solute came into the guard cells. When solute comes, water follows, right? When solute comes inside, when water also comes inside, what happens to the guard cell? Water came, solute came, the guard cell will become turgid. It will swell up. So, it's a turgidity of the guard cells which helps them to open the stomata, right? So, means K plus is a principal cation which is responsible for cell turgor, which is responsible for cell turgidity. Since solute came into the guard cell, water will follow. When water follows, the cell will swell, which is called turgidity. So, K plus, we can tell it is a principal cation responsible. It's a principal cation responsible for cell turgor, responsible for cell turgidity, responsible for cell turgidity. Understood, children? So, first we studied CHO. And we told plant absorbs the CHO from the atmosphere in gaseous form, we told, and plant will never show the deficiency, we told. After 1, 2, 3, we studied 4, 5, 6 elements. Fourth element for us is nitrogen. Fifth element here it is phosphorus. Sixth element is potassium. These 3 elements, Amma, I told you, they are very much required by the plant in large quantities. And if you don't provide them in that quantity, plant will definitely show symptoms. It will show deficiency symptoms. So, that's why we call NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, as critical elements. We call them as critical elements because they are required by the plant in more concentrations, and if you don't provide that concentration, plant shows deficiency symptoms. NPK are critical elements, are required in more concentrations by the plant. That is why the fertilizers what the farmers will buy, the fertilizers what the farmers will buy and add it to the plant contains these 3 combination only. What combination will be there in the fertilizer? Ammonia, urea, NPK combination only will be there, children. So, out of the 9 elements, we completed 6. Take a screenshot, then we'll continue the remaining 3 also. Right. Now, let us talk about the remaining elements. Now what are the three which are left? Calcium is left out, sulfur is left out, magnesium is left out. Let's go with those three elements also then. Any doubts? Post them in the comment box, right? If the lectures are informative, that also you can post them in the comment box. Then 6 elements are done, 7, 8, 9 are there. Now check NCERT. What is the 7th element for us? Which element should we take? Calcium. There also it is 7th element, calcium only. So 7th element we will go with calcium. Now plant absorbs calcium as divalent cation, Ca plus ion from the soil. From the soil, plant absorbs calcium. And one of the important point about calcium is an immobile ion. It stays back in the older and senescent leaves. It cannot move to the younger parts of the plant. So calcium is immobile. It is immobile and stays back. It stays back in older tissues. It stays back in older senescent tissues. It cannot move to the other parts, right children? Now calcium is very much present in the soil, so that if it is there in the soil, plant can take calcium. So usually calcium deficiency plant will not get, because calcium is present in almost all types of soils. We can write that calcium is present in almost all types of soils. Since calcium is present in almost all types of soil, plant will not show calcium deficiency, right? Now let us talk about the physiological functions of calcium. What are the roles of the calcium? Now calcium is not only required by an actively dividing tissue like a meristematic tissue. Calcium is equally important for a differentiated tissue, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, xylem and phloem also. We can tell that calcium is required not only by a meristematic tissue, calcium is required by the differentiated tissue also for performing their functions. Let us write that point. So calcium is required not only by a meristematic tissue, not only required by a meristematic tissue, but by differentiated tissue also. A differentiated tissue like xylem, phloem, all those things also requires calcium. In equal amounts they require calcium. So it is required for dividing tissue also, it is required for a differentiated tissue also. Now where do we find calcium? Where do we find calcium? In cell wall, in middle lamellum formation, means at the time of cell division, we can tell. At the time of cell division. At the time of cell division, during the formation of middle lamellum. During the formation of middle lamellum. We studied this, right? In Cell, the Unit of Life chapter. Middle lamellum is made up of calcium pectate, right? For example, if this is the cell, right? If this is the cell and if the cell is dividing into two cells, so this is called cell plate or middle lamellum. This middle lamellum, what is it made of? It is made up of calcium pectate. It is made up of calcium pectate. So means calcium is required for the middle lamellum formation, means for the cell wall formation, we can tell. So it is required for cell wall formation. That is the first function of calcium. And calcium, we told, like minerals, are activators for so many enzymes. We told potassium is activator for more than 40 enzymes, right? Now calcium also will act as an activator for enzymes like ATPase and amylase. So second function, we'll write calcium is activator. It acts as an activator for enzymes like, I listed two enzymes. One is called ATPase, other one is called amylase. ATPase is an enzyme which is used for making ATP. ATPase helps in synthesis of ATP also, breakdown of ATP also. Amylase is an enzyme which is helping in breaking of starch, right? Amylase helps in breakdown of, it helps in breakdown of starch, right? Amylase is an enzyme which helps in breakdown of starch. ATP is an enzyme which helps in synthesis also, breakdown also of ATP. For these two enzymes, calcium is an activator, right? And translocation, we studied in transport chapter. Upliftment of water, minerals, food. So long distance transport of nutrients through the xylem and phloem is called translocation. Short distance transport can be by diffusion, can be by cytoplasmic streaming, can be by active transport. If it has to transport the substance to 130 meters tall plant, if it has to transport even high, then we tell it as a long distance transport. Long distance transport requires special tissues called vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. So then that mechanism also is called translocation. So calcium helps in translocation of sugars. What plants will transport? Carbohydrates, sugars and amino acids. So we can tell calcium, the third role is calcium helps in translocation. I told what is translocation? Long distance transport of elements through the vascular tissues. Calcium helps in translocation of carbohydrates, means sugars, and amino acids. Calcium helps in upward movement of carbohydrate and amino acids. And calcium is the one which will not sit at one place. It moves from inside to outside, outside to inside, means calcium regulates the functioning of the cell membrane. Calcium is involved in the normal functioning and permeability of the cell membrane also, we can tell. Next one is calcium is involved in normal functioning of what? Normal functioning and permeability of the cell membrane. So calcium controls the permeability of the cell membrane. All these are the functions related to calcium. Let's summarize. Calcium is absorbed by the plant in the form of Ca2 plus ion from the soil in cationic form. Calcium is an immobile element. It gets accumulated in the older leaves because it is making a cell wall. And calcium is present in almost all types of soil. So that's why plant were seldom deficient with the calcium ion. And calcium is equally required by a dividing tissue also, equally required by a differentiator tissue also. Functions of calcium. Calcium will make middle lamellum at the time of cell division. For making the middle lamellum, which is made up of calcium pectate, calcium is required. Now calcium acts as an activator for enzymes like ATPase and amylase. Calcium helps in long distance transport of sugars and amino acids. Calcium is involved in normal functioning and permeability of the cell membrane. So children, out of 9 elements, 7 are done. Take a screenshot. We will discuss with the last 2 elements, magnesium and sulphur. Right. Now, what are the last 2 elements? One is magnesium, the other one is sulphur. We'll go with magnesium first. In NCERT also that is the order. Right. Now, magnesium is absorbed by the plant in which form? Mg2 plus form. So, our 8th element is magnesium. Plant absorbs magnesium as divalent cation only. Divalent cation only. So we told Calcium is absorbed as divalent cation. Magnesium is also absorbed as divalent cation. Magnesium has so many functions to do. So, have you seen the structure of chlorophyll? The ring structure of chlorophyll? At the center, magnesium is there, I will tell. So, for making chlorophyll, magnesium is required. For protein synthesis, smaller subunit and larger subunit should fit like that. For ribosomal association also, magnesium is required. And magnesium is an activator for respiratory enzymes, photosynthetic enzymes, DNA synthesis enzymes, RNA synthesis enzymes. So many. Let us list down one by one. The first one we are telling, like magnesium is an activator. Now, we discussed 4 broad categories. There we told like enzymes should be activated by minerals. There we told the 2 critical enzymes of photosynthesis, PEPKase and Rubisco, are activated by magnesium. Do you remember? The same point we are going to write now. So magnesium acts as an activator. It acts as an activator for the enzymes involved in. It acts as an activator for the enzymes involved in. First process, we'll write down respiration. Next process, we will write down photosynthesis. Next process, we will write down DNA synthesis. And next process, we'll write down RNA synthesis. So, we are telling that magnesium is required for activating the enzymes which are involved in respiration. What is the name of the enzyme which is involved in respiration? The first enzyme in glycolysis is hexokinase, right? So, hexokinase. For this hexokinase enzyme, magnesium is activator. Now, we can write phosphofructokinase also. Phosphofructokinase enzyme also, magnesium is an activator. Pyruvate kinase also. For pyruvate kinase also, magnesium is an activator. So many enzymes are there. Magnesium acts as an activator for many enzymes of respiration. Now we will talk about photosynthesis enzymes. I told you the 2 critical enzymes of carbon dioxide fixation are, one is Rubisco, one is Rubisco. The second enzyme is PEPKase. Rubisco is an important enzyme in C3 plants. PEPKase is an important enzyme in C4 plants. Now, for these 2 enzymes, magnesium is an activator. So, we will see their roles in photosynthesis in detail, don't worry. Then coming to DNA synthesis. DNA synthesis is done by an enzyme called DNA polymerase. For DNA polymerase, magnesium is an activator. So, what is that enzyme called? The enzyme is DNA polymerase. For DNA polymerase, magnesium is an activator. For making RNA, the enzyme is RNA polymerase. For that also, magnesium is an activator. For RNA polymerase also, magnesium is an activator. So children, this is about the first function of magnesium. Then we tell that magnesium is important in protein synthesis also. Magnesium ion concentration in the cell, if it is 0.01 molar, if the concentration of magnesium in the cell is 0.01 molar, then the ribosomal subunits will join together. Helps in, if concentration is so, it helps in ribosomal association. It helps in ribosomal association. Did you understand what do you mean by ribosomal association? This is the smaller subunit of ribosome, and here is the bigger subunit of ribosome. So when will the smaller subunit comes and joins with the bigger subunit? When the magnesium ion concentration is so. If the magnesium ion concentration is less than this, then 30S is somewhere, 50S is somewhere. This is smaller subunit. This is smaller subunit of ribosome. And this is the larger subunit of ribosome. When the smaller subunit should come and pack with larger subunit, then the magnesium ion concentration should be 0.1 molar. If the magnesium ion concentration is 0.1 molar, if the ribosomes have joined, then the RNA will come and bind here. And then the protein synthesis will be done. Amino acids will come and protein synthesis will follow. Means magnesium is required for protein synthesis. In which manner magnesium is required for protein synthesis? Means for ribosomal association. Magnesium ion concentration in the cell, if it is this much, it helps in ribosomal association. It helps in smaller subunit. It helps in ribosomal association. In turn, it favors protein synthesis. What is happening here is amino acids are getting joined to each other, right? It is called protein synthesis. In turn, favors protein synthesis. It in turn favors protein synthesis. That's another function. Now let's talk about the other function. I told, so the chlorophyll structure. What is chlorophyll? It's a pigment. Let me try to draw the structure of chlorophyll. It has a ring structure, pyrrole ring structure. It is like this. Now this is a pyrrole ring structure. In this ring structure, at the center, if magnesium is there, then it becomes chlorophyll. Means magnesium is the constituent of chlorophyll molecule, right? So magnesium is constituent of chlorophyll ring structure. Magnesium is constituent of chlorophyll ring structure, and we know how much significant is the chlorophyll. If chlorophyll is not there, plant cannot do photosynthesis, right? So if chlorophyll is not there, plant cannot prepare its food, right? That's it. All this is the role of magnesium. Let us summarize. Magnesium is a divalent cation. Plant absorbs magnesium as Mg2+. Magnesium acts as an activator for the enzymes involved in respiration, photosynthesis, DNA synthesis, RNA synthesis. Some enzymes I have just listed out. Respiratory enzymes where magnesium acts as an activator is hexokinase, fructokinase, pyruvate kinase. Photosynthetic enzymes where magnesium acts as an activator is rubisco and PEPkase. DNA synthesis enzymes where magnesium is an activator is DNA polymerase. RNA synthesis enzyme where magnesium is an activator is RNA polymerase. Next function of magnesium is magnesium helps in ribosomal association. In turn helps in protein synthesis. This is the picture. Third function, magnesium is a constituent of chlorophyll structure. It makes chlorophyll, in turn helps proteins, in turn helps photosynthesis. Take a screenshot. We'll continue with the last element, sulfur. Right, so we are left with the last element under macronutrients. What is that? Sulfur, right? Now, sulfur also has so many roles. That is why the concentration of sulfur is more in the plant. That is why it is a macronutrient. Plant absorbs sulfur as sulfate ion, SO4 2-, right? Come on. Let's talk about the 9th macronutrient, which is sulfur. Plant absorbs sulfur as, NCERT says it is SO4 2-. I told in which ionic form plant absorbs, they will ask us. I saw it in the NEET paper, so we have to remember this point also. Now sulfur where it is required. Now did you see sulfur containing amino acids? Methionine and cysteine, right? So sulfur is a part of sulfur containing amino acids. So sulfur is part of sulfur containing amino acids. Now what are the names of sulfur containing amino acids? Means one is methionine, other one is cysteine. The other one is cysteine. Okay. Now, methionine and cysteine. If you remember the structure of a human antibody, these are the two heavy chains and these are the two light chains, and we tell the light chain is linked to the heavy chain is linked to the heavy chain by disulfide bonds. Means here one sulfur, disulfide bond. Here one sulfur, disulfide bond. Now, what is this sulfur? The sulfur means here amino acid is there. Either methionine or cysteine is there. Means now you understood that sulfur is present in sulfur containing amino acids. And sulfur containing amino acids are present in the protein chains. And they make disulfide bonds. Now, sulfur containing amino acids. What do? Sulfur containing amino acids present in the proteins. Where are they present? Present in the proteins. What do? They form disulfide bonds. I showed you. They form disulfide bonds. And this disulfide bond will stabilize the structure. They stabilize the protein structure. Now, since the board is stabilized perfectly in its frame, I am able to write here. Now, in the same manner, if the protein is stabilized by proper bonds, then it can do its role. For stabilizing the structure, we need bonds. Disulfide is one such bond. And where can we find disulfide bond? Between sulfur containing amino acids. Not only that role, we can find sulfur as part of ferredoxin. The second role is sulfur is part of ferredoxin. What is ferredoxin? It is called iron sulfur protein. Iron sulfur protein, where do you find it? We find it in electron transport system, which helps in ATP synthesis, which comes in photosynthesis respiration. Plant metabolism means photosynthesis respiration only. Every enzyme, whatever I am talking, all the time I am taking it to photosynthesis respiration. You have to understand that chapter. Okay. The first role of sulfur is it's a part of sulfur containing amino acids, methionine and cysteine. The second part is it's a constituent of iron sulfur protein called ferredoxin. Not only that,